Hello, digital marketers and content creators and GTM engineers worldwide. Welcome to another episode of Building Brite. I'm your host, Peter Upton, head of content at Brite, and I'm here today with Anil, the founder of Brite. How you doing today, Anil?
So far, so good, Peter. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Well, today we last episode we talked a bit about how you marketed your first startup, PadSplit, your first major CMO role at PadSplit, and got into hiring marketers abroad. This time, I want to talk a little bit about how marketing has been going for Bright. You've been in it a couple months now, and you've done quite well. You've got, we have this very robust customer pipeline and many interested parties messaging you, stuff like that. So I want to just talk about what have you been doing going into it. So I guess first, yeah, how's it been going? Tell me a bit.
I mean, this year has been really great for the business. In the first basically 6 months of the year, we grew over 80% compared to end of year 2024, which is great. Having said that, I can't claim that that's due to our excellent marketing. At Bright, we are actually, with you joining the team, we are just starting to invest in marketing. So far, basically what worked for us was founder-led, let's call it king and sales. Predominantly in the first 2 years of Bright, we predominantly grew through basically founder-led brand and referrals through my network and our customers. But now that we have reached a certain scale where we are a seven-figure ARR business, we have the luxury to invest a repeatable and scalable go-to-market motion. And, I have ideas about what will be the foundational pillars of that go-to-market motion, but we haven't proven that yet.
Okay, okay. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about this because these days you hear a lot of people talking about the separation between marketing and sales. It sounds like it's gotten a bit different. I mean, you go back in history and, marketing, sales, advertising, they're all very strict. Like this is marketing, this is sales. But I think now the line has been shifting a lot. Where would you say the line is today between sales and marketing?
I mean, it depends on who you are and who you serve. Okay.
Mhm.
In B2B, there's a more stark difference, or there are more silos when it comes to sales and marketing. Having said that, those lines or teams get a lot more siloed as you move up market and move into a more enterprise go-to-market mode, where
Mhm.
sales can get a lot more important and can drive the decision making. It tends to be a more of a relationship based transaction, whereas when you move down market, especially SMBs, it is practically at times no different than B2C marketing. And marketing can be sales because it tends to be a self-serve motion where, this is called the product-led growth motion, where you're not necessarily speaking to an SDR or a sales rep to buy the service or the product. But I have an old world view of the lines between sales and marketing, especially in B2B. Marketing is sales. Okay. And there's an analogy that I like. Marketing is what makes the phone ring, and sales
Mhm.
is what happens after you pick up that phone. I think it's a continuous motion, and they need to work hand in hand together. But at the end of the day, especially with growth at all costs no longer being a reality, marketing can't be this sort of theoretical exercise of brand building. It has to serve a cause, and it has to be tied to basically helping the business grow, and needs to tie to bottom line numbers.
I like that analogy. What happens after you pick up the phone for sales. This is kind of interesting too, because now you could even argue that, like now with AI, sometimes now even after immediately after you pick up the phone, some of that process is now done in more of a kind of, how do you say it, like a
Can be,
distributed, an automated, distributed manner. So would
yeah.
you say that now has made marketing start to shift a bit more into the realm of sales? The fact that we now maybe have an AI agent or something.
Yeah, it can. And one of the recent trends that I've seen in B2B marketing organizations is actually CMOs and VPs of marketing taking over SDR teams. Okay. Traditionally, SDR, sales development and business development reps, worked under the sales organization, and through the communities I am part of and my interactions with other CMOs and VPs of marketing, I've known many who have taken over SDR teams, and really helping organization or their sales organizations focused on qualified leads after they qualify the leads through the marketing organization. And you can absolutely see this trend continue and accelerate with use of AI, where until somebody is really ready to go into a purchase process, marketing organizations will own the relationship and can manage that relationship at scale without a large team.
Interesting. Yeah, and tell me a bit more about why would a head of marketing be good on the SDR? Is it because they have more of a like a grand picture in their head of what the market looks like than maybe a
I mean,
salesperson would?
one of the reasons why I believe marketers should have especially B2B marketers should have a skin in the game, is that many are not happy with the fact that they don't have a seat at the table. Okay. One of the conversations I had recently, I moderated a conversation with a group of CMOs and CROs, where the complaint from the CMO side is that their teams are at times are viewed or perceived as arts and crafts. Okay.
As a guy who's worked in marketing his whole life, is 100% been my experience.
Yeah. And if you really want to be viewed as an adult and have a seat at the table, that means you need to have a skin in the game. Marketing can't just be around. Branding is extremely important and crucial for what marketing does, but it can't be 100% focused on vanity metrics and around branding projects. And I believe one of the best ways marketers can earn a seat at the table can be really taking over early stages of the sales funnel. SDRs is the perfect place for that, where they pass along the right deals and opportunities to their sales teams to bring those conversations to the finish line.
Okay, so they kind of manage the channels where the inbound's happening as well. So the email, DMs.
Exactly. It's an extension of that, right? Like when they manage the lead flows, okay, and marketing teams owning the hand raisers from those lead flows and qualifying them and getting them ready to a buying process and connecting them with the right sales team to sort of bring that relationship to the finish line, to me sounds like an organic extension of the current state.
Really interesting. And I know you have also an opinion that kind of the dream, like basic marketing team has two sides. You've had a very popular LinkedIn post about this where you believe it's one side is engineering and one side is content creation. So would you say, could you elaborate a bit more on how you see those two teams kind of working together in
Yeah,
marketing?
I wouldn't necessarily say engineering, but there is an aspect of demand generation and demand creation. I'm sorry, demand generation and demand capture. Okay.
Yeah.
So to me, capturing existing demand is more of a more of a scientific approach where there is a basically existing workflow where people are either reaching out or through the signals that you get through the market, you basically fulfill demand. Okay. And that can look like a more of an analytical approach, and you take them through a process where you basically harness that existing demand. To me, that is more like an analytical scientific approach where demand creation, basically convincing a wider audience that they have a problem that they are not aware of. Okay,
Yeah.
convincing that, like, first of all, that they have that problem is a more I would say more of an art rather than.
Yeah, and it's one that, I've heard many times said that often if you're the first start mover in an industry, that's so much of your time. It's almost harder to be a first mover because you spend so much of your time on this part convincing people to even have a problem. Whereas if you're a later mover in an industry, this becomes an easier part of the process.
I mean, it is extremely difficult to, sometimes it's called category creation. It's extremely be difficult that first mover to establish a category, because it feels most of the time basically pushing that boulder up the hill versus rolling it down the hill. And to be frank, there aren't too many examples of companies successfully creating categories.
Do you have any off the top of your head who did?
HubSpot is one of the major examples, successful examples that I can think about, and they created the category of inbound marketing.
Yeah, yeah.
So I happened to, back in 2012, worked at a company where we competed with HubSpot. And to be frank, many of the other competitors disappeared over a decade period of time, and HubSpot mainly captured the majority of the market share when it comes to marketing automation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like couple of competitors from back then, Cato, Oracle bought, I believe IBM bought Silver Pop, Ardot was another vendor. Bunch of players in the space. When you think about that space, HubSpot is the predominant marketing automation platform that is basically used by majority of B2B marketers. They created the category of inbound marketing and captured majority of the value, but it is not a common sort of success story that you see in the marketplace. And to be frank, most of the time, my advice to early stage founders is not to be in the business of category creation, because the odds of success is too low and requires tremendous resources and a longer time frame. Early on, I recommend a lot of founders and marketing teams to be in the business of demand capture, demand fulfillment, rather than demand creation. Because being in front of audiences where they believe they have a problem and they are seeking to solve that, and you just provide them a solution and convince them that your solution is the right way to solve their problem, is a lot easier than convincing somebody, first of all, that they have a problem and that problem is worth solving and they are better off to solve that problem. That process is a lot harder, time consuming, and more resource intensive.
Do you know how HubSpot did that off the top of your head?
They basically wrote a book about it. You can search the book Inbound Marketing by the founders of HubSpot, Dharmesh and Brian. I'm forgetting his last name. And they literally wrote the book about inbound marketing and created a community around how marketing should be done. And rather than focusing on outbound tactics, they should use marketing as a mechanism to basically bring demand inbound. And they created the terminology around inbound. That was, yeah. And it took over a decade for that. And, now they have that big marketing conference inbound in Boston. Like, you don't see HubSpot. Basically, the of course, HubSpot organizes and sponsors the entire event, but the name of the conference is inbound every year. I believe lately it is 7 to 8,000 marketers in September meeting in Boston. So that was a decade plus long journey for HubSpot to be able to get that accomplished.
This is really great for me. I'm a guy who came into like the startup scene around 2019, so it's kind of my history lesson. It's weird because I entered HubSpot was the name. I didn't know all these guys who fallen on the wayside. I didn't know how they'd gotten there.
No, and then this is funny. There is this in the B2B SaaS space called like the Martech map. That was created by Scott Brinker. Now I believe right now he is a VP of ecosystem at HubSpot. At the time, he was the CTO of another software company, and he had his blog. And Scott Brinker started doing this, I believe, around 2012. In the first version of the Martech map, you had about, I don't know, maybe 300 SaaS vendors that really served the sales and marketing needs, like the needs of sales and marketing organizations mostly. And I believe the latest version of Martech Map has over 12,000 vendors. And you have that history of over, a decade, the overall category growing, but most stayed as sort of niche players. Very few turned into platforms like HubSpot today.
Yeah. And kind of going off that, I've heard, for example, that, the term like GTM engineer, stuff like that, that was invented by Clay. That's kind of the Clay would kind of created that same kind of momentum of HubSpot, like the market creation for their own product.
Yeah, I
Someone
mean,
kind of
we are
invented.
to a certain extent what inbound marketing was or marketing automation was back in 2012. You can draw a lot of parallels between that and today's GTM engineering and what Clay team is doing. Okay. And it is possible that Clay can become the next HubSpot when it comes to uh, automation, a use of automation and AI in the go-to-market organizations.
Yeah. So would you say, going back to Bright, tying it all back in, so you would say that Bright, the problem that you're out seeking to solve, people are already aware of the problem generally? You don't find that you're explaining a new problem, or do you find that it's kind of in the middle?
E, yeah, like our customers tend to be people who are already aware of their problem. Today, Bright predominantly helps marketing teams hire elite marketers from Latin America. And the problem that we solve is that elite marketers in the US are rare, okay? And due to a supply demand imbalance, they are expensive to add to your teams. And not all
Yeah.
teams can afford building their entire marketing teams with elite marketers based in the US, okay?
Especially bootstrapped. Yeah.
Especially bootstrapped or early stage startups that have not raised Clay like funding rounds.
Yeah.
And our philosophy is that companies are like professional sports teams, and to build a winning team, you need the best players on your side. okay, on your team, and you shouldn't really care about where those players are based, whether they are in the US or in the world, should not change their value to your team. Okay. And today we predominantly serve clients who understand that they don't have the budgets to build the elite teams that they want to build here in the US. And on top of that, they inherently believe that talent is everywhere. Basically, talent is globally distributed evenly, and they can tap into basically global talent to build their teams. So we do not find ourselves convincing our clients that they have a hiring problem in the US or they have a resource problem to build the teams that they want to build.
Yeah.
Predominantly focused on connecting with folks who believe that they have a problem,
Mhm.
and we convince them that basically our solution is the right way to help solve their current pain point.
Yeah. Yeah. Who would you say has done maybe the most legwork of kind of getting people to start thinking about this pain point? Like, would you say it's like a company that's done like most of the market creation for
You mean
this kind of like the HubSpot
in our space or in
in your space?
to be frank, I would say um, in our vertical, we are still in the early days of, so we are still in the early days, period.
Yeah.
There isn't, it's not a mainstream sort of idea,
Yeah.
and we mainly work with early adapters.
Yeah. Because
Having said that, like, this notion of building global teams is not new at all. Okay. If I were to give examples, it's been basically executed for decades in the software development and IT space. Like, if I were to basically name names, like Infosys is an Indian IT conglomerate that has been serving US Fortune 500 companies for over 5 decades, if not more. Okay. So by no means we are creating this overall category. It has already been created in other verticals like IT and software development. And what I'm focused on is helping do the same in the marketing domain expertise.
yeah. Well, what's interesting too is, yeah, you're right. I think there's been a ton of legwork too in kind of the lower level roles, the rote kind of task roles. Because you could say Upwork, for example, got
Yep.
everyone.
Yep.
I want my video edited. I can go anywhere in the world. I can submit
Yes.
for
And
the lowest bidder. But
to that extent, BPOs, business process automation companies that mainly focus on customer support, call center, data entry, those type of areas, has been in existence for decades, especially in the Philippines and East Asia. There is a ton of basically workforce that help companies do that at scale. Okay. But what is changing is now there's a trend around. So it has been focused on back office, lower level jobs traditionally, with software development, with lack of engineering, appropriate levels of engineering talent in the US over the last, I will say, 5 to 10 years. Companies started hiring basically offshore software engineers, not lower level, basically, but really high level software development tasks.
yeah,
And with COVID, the trend of remote work accelerated significantly.
yeah,
And basically the tool set like video calls, Slack, and other basically technology in the space allowed companies of all sizes to build a remote team structure.
yeah. I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I kind of personally, I noticed a little bit in. I have a lot of experience in Asia, but in kind of developing economies, what kind of happened was they jumped a whole bunch of forms of marketing because the US developed this robust system for marketing before the existence of cell phones and computers. We were doing, we have the TV channels, we had the billboards, we had the radio. These other countries, they didn't develop this so much. So when the digital world came, it hit them like a tidal wave. Everyone got on board. They don't have people who specialized back in the old style. They don't hold on to any of this. Everyone does all their business on WhatsApp, all their business on. So it's interesting.
Yes,
This, yeah,
yes.
it seems
And
more options.
the other piece that I would add to this is that basically major advertising companies in the world, let's call it WPP, Publicis Group, Mediacom, these are major ad agencies that manage the accounts of companies like, Disney, McDonald's. um, they actually, over the last couple of decades, they've been doing their marketing operations primarily for US accounts, primarily in countries like Colombia and Argentina.
Yeah,
All of the sort of account management work is getting done here in the US, but all of the sort of marketing operations of building ad accounts, managing ads are getting done in other places. And these big agencies over the last decade plus educated a workforce of amazing marketers in Latin and other
yeah,
parts of the world. So you are seeing one of the things that we are benefiting from, not only the technological changes and the environment being ripe for remote workforce, but this decades of tradition of offshoring in much larger contexts,
hmm,
basically educating a group of workforce that is ripe for now small, medium-sized organizations to benefit from the talent that was educated and gained experience in the advertising ecosystem.
yeah. So it's definitely a market that seems primed because you have people who have the problem, you have the workforce. It's just the jump.
Absolutely. One of the challenges that we have today is that the market is not big enough. And that's why I chose to, rather than basically raising VC capital and doing a funded startup, I chose to bootstrap Bright. We have been a profitable business from day one. And I believe it will take another at least 5 to 10 years for this trend to become more mainstream. Therefore, we need to play the long game and be patient about really staying in market as long as we can for the tailwinds to catch up. Um, one of the things I realized over the last 2 years is that timing is everything, and you can't necessarily rush it. And once you raise capital, you have to deploy that capital. You have a finite amount of time frame, and you don't have the luxury to sit on that capital. So at times, raising capital, depending on where the timing is not necessarily the right way to create a winning company.
Yes. Yeah. I watched that video of you with John, and I remember one of the quotes that stuck out to me that he said was something like, you have a certain number of tries, and you're always trying to look to extend. The more tries you can take, the more chance that you'll have success.
Yes, and then I I agree with what John said in that conversation was basically, if you are using your capital more efficiently, that gives you more tries, okay? But it doesn't necessarily change the timeline. But sometimes it's just, if your time horizon is too small, no matter how many tries that you're going to get in that time horizon, your chance of success is low. And sometimes the goal has to be expanding that time horizon. And
Exactly.
that might mean just, being a smaller organization for a longer period of time, just to be able to catch the right trend and right time in the market.
Excellent. Well, I want to wrap this up with one, I guess, last question. Have you had a client come to you that and it surprised you how they found out about you? It was?
I would say, at our scale, the thing that surprised me most was our network's willingness to recommend us and just say, hey, you should talk to Anil about this. I was, the fact that we were able to grow Bright to 7-figure revenues just on the back of warm introductions and referrals from my immediate network and our early customers was a big surprise for me. I knew that was going to be the case early on and that I invested in that, but I've never thought that we could build a million ARR business primarily out of warm introductions and referrals from my network. That has
Many
been
would
the
say it's the dream. Yeah.
that has been the biggest surprise of the journey so far.
Well, I believe we're coming up on the hour, so I guess we'll wrap this one out. But thanks so much for talking about this stuff with me. This has been a great history lesson of it for me and talking about the industry.
Thank you, Pete.